tick, tick. Is that the sound of the clock counting down for the super committee or for the economic bomb to blow up if they punt until after the election?
That's 18 months from now.
Yeah, it does.
And that's bull. That's the answer is 18 months from now we maybe get something done?
So, is he right? Would no deal be a bad deal for job creators? Hi, everyone. I'm Brenda Butner. This is Bulls and Bears. Let's get right to it. The Bulls and Bears this week, Gary B. Smith, Jonas Max Ferris, along with John Thomas Financial CEO Tom Belesis, Scott Martin from Accent Asset Management, and Democratic media consultant Steve Murphy. Welcome to everybody. Tom, no deal, a BS deal for jobs?
I agree. I mean, these cuts that take place in 18 months are a bunch of BS. I mean, it's a bunch of crap. They have to make these cuts now. I mean, they have to stop messing around. They got to put an end to the uncertainty on America's economic future and the job creators right now. They have to make the cuts. No one's going to be happy, but it's their job and responsibility for the future of this country to make the tough decisions, even if they're not the right ones.
Well, I don't know, Jonas, you're smiling. That may be because you're in Miami, or it may be because you're disagreeing with Tom.
Some cuts are better than no cuts. I actually like severe, serious cuts, which is the penalty for no action, and they kick in later, as with the tax increases if there's no action. And that's actually kind of good because the economy is not so great right now, and it can't handle either tax increases or major spending cuts, which is what they're supposed to be doing if they get together and agree. So this could work as long as they don't then put off those cuts when those come down the pike in a couple of years.
And Steve, you're worried about them failing.
Yes, I am worried about them failing. We need to have the big deal, the $4 trillion deal. These cuts, half of these cuts are completely illusory. The defense, 15% defense cut is not going to go into effect. Congress will quickly reverse that and may well reverse some of the other cuts. No, we need a big deal. I don't think the automatic cuts are automatic at all.
Gary B., I know how much you love Congress, and you love anything they do, so where do you stand on this one?
Well, hard to believe, Brenda, but I guess I most agree with Steve, only I would add a zero behind it. You know, I can appreciate the sentiment that Tom made right up front. But the fact is, we're talking about, what, 1.2, 1.3 trillion in cuts. Wow, that sounds so great. Until you realize, A, it's spread over 10 years. B, the federal budget still rises each and every year despite that. C, defense spending will still go up. And D, we have a $15 trillion deficit. This is a drop in the, this is nothing. Whether they do something, Brenda, or whether they do nothing, you will see absolutely no change. We got to go big in the parlance of government, and that's why I say put a zero behind Steve's 4 and make it a $40 trillion cut. Then you start to have something.
All right, go big, Scott. Is that what you're saying, too?
Gary B., now you're playing with some real money here. Brenda, look, maybe Mr. Miracle-Gro is just upset because the half of the country is going to go into winter right now and not use his product for the next 6 months. I kind of contest this issue with some of the businesses complaining about Washington putzing around.
He's a maker of pesticide.
Exactly. Well, here's the thing, Brenda, because, look, I'm not so sure that this deadlock in Washington is keeping people from hiring. I mean, the economy, to Jonas's point, actually is starting to recover a bit. We got 2.5% GDP in the third quarter. Fourth quarter looks a little stronger. We're still hiring workers. Blaming Washington for a slowdown in the business committee seems like pointing fingers to me.
What do you think, Tom?
I think I have to disagree because confidence right now in the system is at an extremely low level. I mean, entrepreneurs are not willing to go out there and risk capital to put back in the system because of the uncertainty that's going on in Washington right now.
So you want them to do anything, is what you're saying?
They have to go, listen, 1.2 trillion is a complete joke in itself. They have to go big, and they got to make the cuts now.
So a deal or no deal? Really, that's what we're asking. Steve?
Absolutely, we need one.
Okay. Tom, you're saying?
Deal.
Deal. Jonas?
I'm comfortable with the automatic cuts as long as those don't get then put off.
So you're saying deal? You're saying...
No, I'm saying no deal is acceptable because
No deal.
the automatic cuts and the tax increases that will kick in are acceptable, in my opinion.
Okay, well, what happens to the economy, though, if there's no deal? Gary B.?
I guess the biggest downside will be another ratings decrease, which honestly seemed to have almost no effect the last ratings decrease we had. So the problem with a deal, Brenda, is I know what's going to happen with the deal. You're going to see taxes go up, and you're going to see promises for spending to go down. We'll never see the promises met. Spending will not go down, and taxes will go up. So in this case, I'd rather see the sequester or no deal happen at this point.
Well, Brenda, you give them more money to spend, and they'll take it. I mean, that's exactly the point, Gary B. You put more tax out there, and guess what? We get more spending. And I'll tell you, Brenda, you know what would be the greatest thing that would happen? We get downgraded again, because I'll tell you what happened. The administration went on TV and said, oh, my goodness, rates are going to spike if we get downgraded. Treasury rates fell to their lowest in history after we got downgraded.
You guys are talking, you know, big issues and like kind of bring it down to the people here, like me, and explain it a little bit more. When you talk about downgrades,
lower rates, that's better for growth.
When you talk about downgrades, you're talking about rating services who basically say we get an A or a B on our credit, right? Like normal people do. It's basically credit history for the country. Right?
Which is a risk of default, Brenda, exactly, which rates the risk of default of that underlying debt piece,
but what
right?
Does that mean for jobs,
But the point is, well, what it does, Brenda, is actually, I think it'll encourage job growth, because with rates low, companies able to borrow at low rates, they can create capital, they can create jobs in that environment.
Okay, so Tom, bringing this back to jobs again.
Brenda, I got to tell you, the uncertainty in Washington that's taking place there is causing job creators not to hire people and spend on their businesses. That's the bottom line. I mean, it's clearly evident out there in the system. So no one right now is confident in spending in their business until Washington gets what they're doing in order there.
Even if they do something like spend more.
You know, we're also seeing this crowding out effect that we talk about with huge deficits and debt. It's very real when banks can borrow money from the Federal Reserve for 25 basis points and then invest in T-bills. Why to the tune as much as the Fed will give them? Why bother to make a risky investment, even a slightly risky investment in the private sector? We're seeing that happen too. We need to reduce the deficit and debt. I know it's unusual for a Democrat to say this, but it's a big problem for the economy right now.
Okay.
Right, you know, Brenda, first of all, Steve is the best Democratic strategist. He's the closest to reality of, I think, of any of the strategists we've had on our show. But I will Tom makes one good point. I think whatever Congress does one way or another is silly numbers-wise. But I agree with him that if they do something positive, at least they would show they have a little bit of a backbone. That's the problem, because if they don't, we might as well, you know, be Italy or Greece for that matter, and just say, oh, what the heck, you know, we'll spend whatever we want. We'll
hey, we got our own currency, Gary B.
Thank you, Gary.
Okay. All right. Don't worry, Steve. You don't have to take that praise and advertise it. All right. I'm Gary B.
Don't listen to him, Steve.
Okay. Bond